and there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Genesis 1:5. One of the weird aspects of the creation narrative in the Tanakh and Bible is how it shaped the structure of the day. On every day of creation, we read that there was an evening and morning, and curiously the Jewish day starts at the evening time. The natural order of the day isn't a question, yet if you, like others, have ever wondered why the Hebrew day starts in the evening, well, here's why. The words used in the text have an interesting etymology. Evening is Erev and day is Voka. The history of these words indicates that the evening, Erev, means mixing, and morning, Voka, means to cleave, split apart. To some this makes sense, and you can probably guess the how and why these terms were used for evening and day. For others it's unclear. The imagery these words conjure is of a sun blending with the dark of night for the eventide and the breaking away from the old day into the new, so the application of these ideas lends itself well, I believe. Yet, why does this inspire a day that starts in the evening? Surely we awake at 6 a.m., not 6 p.m. Well, it is down to philosophy. To understand this better though, we are going on a mathematical journey. In the 7th century CE, Brahmagupta formalized the idea of zero being a number. The previous number systems didn't always have a zero, so to speak, especially in Roman numerals and some Arabic schools. Brahmagupta had reasoned to himself that something has to come from somewhere. The term shunya, meaning emptiness, became synonymous with zero due to his reasoning. He basically suggested that one comes from something, which in this case is nothing, but the nothing is something. This is probably the easiest way to explain it without using philosophical grammar, which can be a nightmare, especially if you aren't aware of the terms beforehand. So, basically zero is nothing, but that nothing is actually something, and from nothing comes another thing. Philosophy pretty much agreed that nothing is indeed a thing in itself, but it is still hotly debated amongst many philosophers. Anyway, why is this necessary to understanding the day starting at 6 p.m. in Hebrew culture? It's a very intriguing thing to wonder why should a day start in the evening, and it was due to understanding the availability of matter prior to creation. Was it already there, or did it come after an event? The reasoning behind the evening start of the day is that everything had to be available for creation to begin, for to them it didn't evolve. Yet the question remained, where did everything come from? Somewhere or nowhere? This was explored in the Indias. The Chandogya Upanishad explored this idea, likening a seed to the concept of zero or nothing, with its roots deep in the metaphysical idea of shunya, the void, this being the source of all manifestation. It is discussed in the dialogue between sage Adalaka and his son, Shvetakatu. When Adalaka asks his son to break open a tiny banyan tree seed and look inside, Shvetakatu sees nothing. His father explains that what appears to be nothing, or an empty void, is in fact the subtle, invisible essence from which the massive banyan tree springs. It's been discerned that the very first spiritual ideas were basically agreed on the principle that we come from and go back to the nothing. They didn't perceive heaven or hell originally. These were later concepts adapted through what you might call storytelling. In the ancient past, certain areas were known for their specialist skills or knowledge. These are the days long before universities and schools, where if you wanted to learn about something, you traveled to where those skills were taught and researched. From west to east, you had stone workers based in an area that's now Germany, and this area extended northwards to Doggerland. Then you had medicine in the Middle East, Israel through to Iran, then mathematics, astronomy in the Indias, and finally philosophy in the Far East, China through to Australia. So if you wanted to learn about philosophy, you would travel to China, and for medicine, travel to Iran. The traveling also introduced syncresis to these ideas, so eventually they blended into the philosophies of the respective areas, and what may port to be astronomical could be rooted also in religious belief and medicine. In a nutshell, this is how ideas traveled from one culture to another. So the philosophy of zero traveled to the Middle East, but a while after Genesis was originally written. Something people forget is that the Jewish texts have been frequently edited, so they have been quite fluid over time. Ideas about an afterlife, a beginning and some other concepts were not considered in Judaism for a long time. When we understand this, we see that the creation narrative of the Babylonians was remixed and edited into the Genesis we know. I've explained this in depth, in many articles. So the later idea of nothing was edited into the text. Along with the reasoning that everything had to be available for creation to begin, we begin to understand why the day begins in the evening. There are many additional teachings that run parallel with the Jewish texts, called midrashim, which offer complementary answers for reading between the lines. Such questions as, was Adam born a baby or formed as a man, can be found in such texts. The answers are often intriguing and sometimes make for amusing anecdotes. The reason they exist is for examples such as, why does the day start in the evening? In essence, the Hebrew mind reasoned that everything had to be available for creation to happen and all things were ready to go. There was the nothing, but within it was everything, similar to the Indian metaphysics of zero, shunya, the essence from which all is born. So the evening part of the day is represented as indicating everything was present. That's the long and short of it, basically. Next, we look at when one day starts and another ends. Is there a clear marker? The only real obvious marker is the sun, with its journey, well actually our planet spinning, that indicates the passage of a day. So how can a day split from another? In the period of evening, the moon and sun appear, indicating once more that everything is present, but at a particular point in the day the sun appears to leave, or split away, only to return the next day. Combining the splitting away of the sun with mixing, the meaning of Erev *, evening, if you recall, and you get the basis of why the Hebrew day starts at eventide. Philosophically, you have the abundance of creation being remixed and breaking away to form a new day, so logically the daybreak had to be at a point when everything is present, and this was the reasoning. The actual Jewish account of creation begins in Genesis 2:4, and what we read before this is the edited Babylonian influence. In this edit, the understanding of Oriental philosophies is embedded, the abundance within the essence of the universe, creation. Of course, the math was resolved centuries later, but the science was already there. Each day is a new creation, cleaving from the previous, reusing and recycling whatever is present, from the abundant supply of the cosmos. This motif is famously encaptured within the song, Morning Has Broken, by Eleanor Farjon, written in 1931 and made famous as a song in popular culture by Cat Stevens.
Morning has broken, like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken, like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing, fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness, where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light. Eden saw play, praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
In the broader scheme of things, we often reflect upon what happened and how it occurred, and with the benefit of hindsight we can explain these things. It's in this very way that we retrospectively edit our histories, often consolidating information within the texts in order to revise them. It was in this very way that the book of Genesis was written. To start at Genesis 2:4 is a beginning, but the real beginning happened before this. Some people, mostly Christians, say the Bible is a perfect text that should remain unchanged, but the simple fact remains that there is clear evidence that the book of Genesis, and others in the Old Testament, have been edited and revised. The whisking away of Israel's Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach and Abednego led to them learning about the creation narrative that the Zoroastrians have. Incorporating this information under Babylonian rule enabled the faith to grow and grant them those pieces that were missing from their history. People, Christians included, forget that the Persian influence includes their belief, which was Zoroastrianism, and the Persian history enabled lots of missing jigsaw puzzle pieces to be filled into the Hebrew puzzle. I find it fascinating that people have asked such questions as the one posed here, and the midrashim are full of answers from those who think and ponder over questions asked about faith. Equally, Within Islam, the same thing is explored through hadiths. Some of the ponderings are amusing, yet many more are deep philosophical yearnings to be understood. As we grow and cleave from our families, and mix with others to form new branches of the family tree, the motif also explains this reasoning in context to how a day starts. It further reveals how we begin afresh, each day to enjoy God's recreation of the new day. So if you are ever asked why the Jewish day starts at 6 o'clock in the evening, hopefully you will know why now.